everybody in, and then we'll get started here in a couple of minutes.
I've gone ahead and hit the record button, Sharon, so thanks for the editing.
Good morning, everybody. We're going to give it another minute or two and let a couple more folks come in, and then we will go ahead and get started. If you want to share in chat who is on the call, that would be helpful as we're moving in. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being with us. I'm Dean Hebel, Executive Director of 10 at the Top, and appreciate you taking some time to be with us this morning for our Greenwood County virtual listening tour session. We are hosting these across the Upstate region over the next couple weeks. So we had our first one last week with Cherokee County, and we appreciate y'all being with us today here in Greenwood. Would ask everybody please to share in the chat that you are your name and organization that you're with, so we can make sure we know who's on the line. The purpose of this call is to really hear from you. So we have a number of folks from our team who are going to be asking some different questions around different topics, but we want to learn from you what's going on in Greenwood as it relates to COVID-19, to the kind of reopening of the community, and where there are similarities between our counties, and then where there are things that we with 10 at the Top as a regional connector can be supportive and helpful to you as we move forward over the next couple months. So we've got a script with some specific questions, and then we're going to open it up for some other opportunities. We do have a few folks who are from other communities who are with us, who we've invited folks to be on the call. Our feeling is, this is about connecting, so we've opened it up to be for really anyone who has an interest in learning what's going on in Greenwood. Let me start by introducing my team who's going to be part of this. Erin Ouzts, who is the coordinator of our entrepreneurial ecosystem, will ask some questions around economic development. Unfortunately, Michael Hildebrand, who is the director of the Upstate Mobility Alliance, had a conflicting call this morning, so I'm going to replace him asking some infrastructure questions. Then we have Justine Allen, who is our program and events coordinator, who will ask some questions about some of the community needs and things. And then Sharon Purvis, who is our outreach director, is going to ask some wrap-up type questions. We're going to do this a little bit differently than we did with our first call last week. We realized, what we want to learn initially is kind of how y'all feel things are going and have been around a number of specific areas. And so rather than spend time kind of asking you for a general feel, we're instead going to do a poll. So I'm going to launch this poll. Hopefully it will work. And I'll ask everybody from the Greenwood area if you would answer these questions. And they're all the same around a different topic. And the first one is, when it comes to social services and healthcare in Greenwood, how do you feel your community's personal well-being needs have been met? And 1 to 10 is the range. And then we have the same question around working with manufacturers and large employers, and then around local small businesses and entrepreneurs, restaurants and retail stores, and then schools, K-12, colleges and universities, and then lastly, city and county governments. So if you would take a minute and share kind of your thoughts on this, hopefully everybody is able to do that. Heather, I'm going to unmute you and ask, can you see the poll?
Yes, I can. Just make sure that you scroll down on the side. At first, it looks like when you answer the first question, you would go ahead and submit. Just make sure that you scroll down and answer all the questions, and then the submit will be highlighted.
Perfect. So if you guys can do that, we'll take a minute to let you go through and do that, and you'll let me know when people have completed all of the questions. Great, we're getting some responses here. We'll give maybe another 2 minutes or a minute or two for folks to finish up. We should have, by my count, about 12 to 15 folks from Greenwood to participate on this. So we've got 5 right now. So everybody else, I think, is taking a couple minutes to complete. All right, if anyone has not taken it yet who is from Greenwood, if you could try to wrap this up quickly. We've gotten 10. I think we should have maybe a couple more than that responses. So if anyone is having trouble, if you want to let me know, but we'll give it another few seconds and then we'll wrap up the polling. I guess those who are on the phone may not be able to do this. Let's see. That looks like that might be everybody we're going to get. So I'm going to go ahead and end the polling. So let's see where we are on the results. I'm going to share these with everyone so you can see it. The first question, when it comes to social services and healthcare, where do we stand? And this is good news, 6 through 9, with 8 being the number one answer. So obviously people feel like, there has been a good job done locally of making sure people are getting their general needs met during the crisis. As it relates to manufacturing and large employers, again, very strong with a lot of 8s and 9s, which is good. When it comes to chain or non-chain local businesses, we're a little bit more in the middle, although it looks like we kind of have a split. We have 4 who gave it a 9, which is very strong, but then we had more folks who were kind of closer into the middle range. So Erin, when you talk about that section, that'll be something interesting to get some direct input from folks with. And then restaurants and retail, it looks like kind of the same thing. Some lower scale answers, but then a couple at the higher level as well, which is probably pretty consistent. Then education, it looks like 6, 7, 8 all around there. So Justine, that'll be something we can dive into a little bit more. And then local governments, Toby, you gave it a 2, right? No, we have 1 low score, and then for the most part, we're pretty high up there at 7, 8, and we do have a 10. So again, some disparity, and no answers are right or wrong. We just we know this is very subjective, but we wanted to have kind of a general starting point as we get into our questions. So Justine, if you can unmute everybody, we're going to go ahead and start, and I'll give everybody a chance to participate on the different questions. The first one I want to ask, and you all in Greenwood have historically been very strong at communicating with each other, so this is not certainly a surprise. But I would like to know if there have been any partnerships either that have been formed or elaborated on during this time locally that have helped you all to work collaboratively. And I see that Terence Roberts, you're on the call, so I'll kind of let you moderate these questions here, and we'll get some answers from some of our folks locally. So you guys are welcome, everybody, to chime in. But Heather, I'll start with you. Maybe you and Toby can answer, and then we'll go to others. What have you guys been doing from a collaboration standpoint as it relates to since the crisis started in late February, early March?
Okay, I'll just mention 2 things that I think have gone extremely well. One, of course, is that we have worked collaboratively as a leaders group to put together a battle plan. Laura Hudson and the city, as well as George McKinney with the county, we have all been working on that, really taking into account the different segments of recovery and the different areas that we needed to focus on. So that's one thing we've done well in terms of partnership. The other is George McKinney, Emergency Services Coordinator, and I have been meeting with the K-12 system over the last couple of weeks, and I brought in a former employer I worked with, Connected Nation, and we are working to put together a comprehensive broadband update for the county, focusing on the more rural areas and the areas that don't have access. We've pulled in some mapping layers and things like that, and are working to get some additional information on how we can meet the county's goals, utilizing the 5 miles or less with the fire districts and the new fire sheds. So we're trying to see how we can ensure that all of our residents have access and use of broadband.
Perfect. Toby or anybody else, anything to add?
No, I think Heather covered the main topics. I would say the two things I'd add on is obviously we worked a lot closer with DHEC than we normally do during this process. And the second, George McKinney has worked well with the hospital, trying to make sure everybody's on the same page as far as that goes. So other than what Heather said, those.
Dean, this is Laura Hudson. I would just add also that Ben Calhoun and the Small Business Development Center has really been a huge help and assistance, providing tons of resources to our small businesses. My focus, of course, is specifically Uptown, but he has been a great partner, and we have really appreciated everything they've done to help our folks through all of the SBA lending processes.
Great, and that kind of flows into Erin. If you want to ask some questions specifically about entrepreneurs and small businesses and just the economic development in general, we can elaborate maybe on what Laura has said, and I think Ben is on the call as well. Erin?
Okay, good, Dean, thank you. All right, then it was very interesting to see the poll and kind of the, I don't want to say bifurcated responses, so I look forward to hearing more about everybody's perspective. But let's back up to before the crisis. What would you say was the overall health of the small businesses and entrepreneurs in Greenwood? Was it, were they robust, growing, average, below average? What would y'all say? Laura, Ben?
Yeah, I'll comment on that. I can just speak to the clients that we work with specifically, and coming into this year, we really gained a lot of momentum at the end of last year, coming into this year with new business starts and expansion projects. So coming into the crisis, it was very strong, in my opinion. Really, I think we were able to look back about 5 years worth of data, and we were trending to have a record-breaking year is what it was setting up to be coming into the crisis. So that's my perspective based on the clients that I've been working with.
Okay, good. Thank you, Ben.
I would agree. I mean, as far as the Uptown businesses, we have a very strong retail group of folks in Uptown. I would tell you there are several of them that were really prepared to have to pivot and go to more of an e-commerce online type selling process. But there still are some that weren't prepared for that. And that's something that we're working on. But as far as pre-pandemic, our businesses were flourishing. We had several new stores and businesses open in Uptown, and we're looking for more of that, hopefully, after we get through whatever we want to call this.
Good. Thank you, Laura, and thank you, Ben. Yeah. David, feel free to jump into, and I see someone else on the phone.
Yes. Hello, everybody. David Doherty here. I just wanted to chime in and add that I agree that many of our businesses coming into this were prepared, but there's probably a larger percentage that were not prepared. We spent a lot of time being engaged with some of the small business community and trying to help them through the process of applying for the subsistence monies that were out there to help them, and also providing a lot of webinars with content related to personnel management, related to things that they had to be careful about doing the correct way. But it's a kind of a mixed bag from our perspective, and of course our perspective incorporates the nonprofit groups too. Greenwood is fortunate to have quite a few nonprofits, and they have all worked very hard to serve their constituents. But I think, as Laura says, when we get through this, we're going to look back and we're all going to smile at each other and say, well, okay, we're here.
All right, good, David. Thank you. So y'all have already, because it's three of you speaking, that kind of leads to the next question, which would be, what are your kind of go-to resources or organizations that support small businesses and entrepreneurs? And we already know we've got the Small Business Development Center, the Chamber of Commerce, and then Laura, your program. Is there anything else specifically to support the small, privately owned businesses?
In addition to the good job that Ben has done over these last few months too, there's a lot of resources that's come to bear from the chamber world, particularly with the State Chamber of Commerce and to some extent the U.S. Chamber.
Okay, all right, very good. Laura, Ben, anything else? Well, Ben, you've been doing your weekly webinars. Ben?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we've been doing those every Friday where we get our consultants across the region together. In the beginning, it was content centered. We talked about the SBA's programs, how to navigate them. But now we've shifted to more of a Q&A session, more of an open forum to really just hear what's on the minds of the small businesses that we serve. So we got another one scheduled for this Friday. Eventually, as we get more feedback on what the needs are for reopening and the road to recovery, we probably will pivot again and make some adjustments to that content. But that's just been a good forum for people to ask their questions and then find out about the other resources that are there to help them, individually. So I'm really proud of the job our team has done of, stepping up and just being that person, that contact that somebody can call and actually ask a question to, can get through to, hopefully quickly. We try to return calls as quickly as possible. But the other thing that I've really been proud of for the Greenwood area is the collaboration that was mentioned earlier by Laura and by Heather, just having the opportunity to work with each other or work with people that we may not have had a chance to work with in the past. I think it's putting us in a position to be even better prepared to deal with things that come in the future.
Good. Yeah, go ahead,
Erin,
Dave.
if I could ask, because I don't think we have this on the scripted questions, the CARES Act loans, have you all had success in Greenwood with some of your businesses getting some of those?
I'll let Ben.
Absolutely. This is David again from the Chamber. The banks in this area have really been in an outreach mode and serving the client base that they've had. We've seen some real good numbers with banks reporting huge numbers of loans made as well as the dollar volume associated with them.
Excellent. Good. Good. Well, so along those lines, so sorry, my phone, I forgot to turn it off. So let's talk specifically what kind of challenges your businesses were facing. I mean, where, some of them were able to pivot and had their numbers in order so they could get the funding. Some of them obviously were not so prepared. So were the challenges just in terms of cash flow? Were they in terms of, oh no, I'm paralyzed, I don't know what to do, just no more customers? I mean, what were some of the specific challenges they faced?
Yes, all of those things. Yeah, I mean, there were lots of challenges, I think. I think for a lot of the uptown businesses and some of the other smaller businesses within the city, they just didn't know where to turn for a lot of the information. So one of the roles that we played from the uptown and then in turn the city would share the same information was we were providing as much information and as many resources as possibly because they didn't know where to turn. They didn't know, Ben, of course, was a great resource and we sent lots of folks to him, but there were other needs than just those PPP or EIDL loans. There were things like, okay, I can do curbside delivery. I'm a restaurant. How do I do that? Or the retail folks, can we do, a lot of our businesses weren't really good about reading the governor's orders or even understanding them. So we helped them interpret a lot of those. We had one business that posted they had to close, but they didn't realize they could do they could still do delivery and curbside pickup. So we found that was a lot of it was just they didn't know where to find the information.
Okay.
I think the information was there. They just weren't sure where to find it. So we were pushing a ton of information out. Uptown is a Main Street community, so we were getting a ton of information from National Main Street as well as our group of other, 20 plus Main Street communities. We just sent each other as much information as we could find and pushed it out to our businesses.
Okay, Laura, thank you. That was very good.
If I could ask another question, Amanda is on here from Lawrence, and they have done a really good job in Lawrence of specifically, showcasing their businesses and trying to encourage local, buying local, especially the restaurants and things. In Greenwood, I mean, you guys historically are really good at showcasing your local businesses. What did you guys do to Laura, beyond just, once people understood what they could do in terms of curbside pickup or whatever, did y'all do anything, any campaigns in the community, either through the chamber or the Uptown program to try to help encourage people to, use the restaurants and things of that nature?
Absolutely. We did a lot of different things. There was one specific individual who started a great campaign. It was called Team Greenwood, Support Local. And all of our stores and restaurants sold these great t-shirts. Everybody was wearing them. So that was kind of the first leg. Then, of course, we promoted everything that was going on we possibly could on Facebook. Uptown actually purchased some A-frame type signs for the businesses for their curbside locations for pickup. We made lists of who was providing curbside, who was providing delivery, and their operating hours, because those things were changing on the reg from day to day. So yeah, we followed a lot of the same things. I know Amanda and Jonathan both in Lawrence, and we kind of all were sharing ideas. So we definitely were doing the same thing, and we're continuing to do that. We're actually getting ready to kick off a We're Open When You're Ready campaign for Uptown and general for shopping, designing some ads and things to help continue to push people uptown and to all the businesses.
And
Okay.
I think I saw Stephen Gilbert on here with the theater. Stephen, you guys obviously are in a situation where it's about showcasing two people, but you, along with others in the region, came up with a unique way to continue to be engaged. Can you talk a little bit about how that came about, and then what your plans are for moving forward?
Sure. We started a coalition called the Curtains Up Coalition with, I believe it's 9 upstate theaters, including Wild Hare here in Greenwood. And we are putting virtual content online every Wednesday. And all of the other theaters are promoting the one that is being featured that week, trying to raise awareness for the performing arts across the upstate, but also trying to help get donations from areas that we may not have gotten donations. And it's the first 2 weeks have gone really well. This week is Market Theater. They'll have something online tonight, I believe, at 8 o'clock. As far as our plans going forward, Dean, I don't know. We still are not able to reopen. And once we reopen, Laura put out a poll. She had, I think, about 700 and some odd responses. And the theater is about the last place people are willing to come back into. So we're looking at more of a long-term strategy than short-term, I guess.
Sure. And we'll probably talk a little bit more about the, I know the Festival of Flowers is been postponed or canceled and things of that nature. So as we move, we'll probably ask a couple more questions later about kind of the general community feel. But Erin, anything else from your end?
Well, I just want to skip forward to the the large manufacturers and the manufacturers and the large employers. Were there any specific challenges that they saw that were separate or different than the Main Street, the small privately held businesses?
I think some of the things that we saw, some of our larger employers, because they have locations in different communities, they were trying to get ahead of whether or not they would be deemed essential, and how they would go about that process with the state of ensuring that they were, because of having different divisions. Some divisions were essentials, others were deemed not. So we worked a lot with that. We also had some concerns early on about people returning to the workforce because of the additional payments associated with unemployment, and how that would impact their ability to get back to working. We did have one, what I would consider to be major industry, 165 employees, that did cite COVID as a contributing factor to an already kind of troubled local facility. Otherwise, we have seen a lot of really good success in working with the programs through the CARES Act and working with local leadership. Two of our companies actually were able to go into new product lines, both Greenwood Mills and Mumford Industries. We were able to showcase both of them. And so for the most part, I would say it's been relatively positive. We have about, I think, and Toby can correct me if I'm wrong, but somewhere between $40 and $50 million right now of opportunity before county council. And so, you know, we think that that is strong, and we have 4 new buildings that are under contract since this started. And we've had, I think, 6 requests for information since this all started. So luckily, we seem to be positioned to continue to see a pretty good year all in all, and just trying to mitigate, though, any of those things that are brought to our attention from the existing industries.
Okay, Heather, thank you very much. If that's all and everybody's, David, did you want to say something?
Yes, Erin, over the last 6 weeks, the Chamber has convened our Human Resource Roundtable and conference calls, and talking with the larger manufacturers and some of the medium-sized ones as to what's going on in their world and how are they dealing. The reports we're having is that none of the manufacturers are having any serious problems with attendance or anything of that nature. It seems that they all have their arms around good protocols in terms of keeping their employees safe. Business seems to be off in some areas, but not in others. You're having spotted furloughs that are, have taken place. But also we're beginning to see where there were furloughs, there's been recalls coming into play also. So I think overall, just to echo what Heather was saying, is, I think our manufacturing community is very healthy and poised well to come out of this. And hopefully with the activity that's going on, that maybe we'll be able to land a few more.
Great. David, thank you. Anybody, anything else? Dean? Well, then if that's, well, thank you all for all these very good, candid responses and great ideas to pass on to other communities. So I'm going to turn it over to Dean, who is going to talk about infrastructure.
Great. Well, I'm actually going to turn it over to Terence, who is going to replace Michael to do that. That is was behind the scenes, Erin. So
Okay.
Terence, if you'll go ahead and ask the questions about infrastructure.
God, man, I was a little late. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, those of you in Greenwood. I like Greenwood. I think it's a hidden gem. I like its golf courses. I played Stony Point a couple of weeks ago, and first time I played it. And Lake Greenwood is large. I didn't realize that would be on the lake on the backside, I think. But as regard to infrastructure, given that many of the people who have been working on lower paying service jobs and often have related issues as far as access to transportation, and we get that a lot in Anderson. So I'd be interested to see what have been some of the challenges during the course of the crisis on getting people to work. And how have y'all addressed the transportation issue on those people who are on the lower end of the economic status pole of getting them to and from work? Y'all solved it all. And I
Well,
should know this. Do y'all have public transportation? Do you have a bus? You don't have a bus system? Okay.
Terrence,
I think Heather, y'all have been working on that in the background, hadn't you?
yes, sir. Pre-COVID, we were convening a group of the COG, the county, the city, Office on Aging, the partnership, the chamber, and others. So if I left anyone out, my apologies. We had gotten Mr. Manwicki from Department of Transportation, as well as Secretary or Commissioner Hall down here. And we're really trying to make some strides into getting the plan updated. And unfortunately, Rick Green, when he's reached out recently trying to see where we are, it seems that everything pretty much stopped after our last meeting and with COVID. So we haven't made a lot of progress yet. But ideally, it looks like there could be some state and federal dollars per SCDOT that we could draw down to help establish at least a small and scalable public transportation opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
I think the first focus would be on the healthcare related public transportation, and then we'd have to go from there. But unfortunately, I wish I had more to report in the way of progress, but it just has kind of stymied over the last 3 months.
Thanks. I know that healthcare and getting people, especially older people, to and from their appointments, and I think our healthcare system, or looking at Uber and Lyft and just being able to try to get people to and from work. And I know funding is an issue in trying to get people to go back to work. I assume that the service industry is very heavily involved in just trying to get to and from work. We heard this issue when we were talking in Cherokee County, and I think somebody mentioned it before in regard to kids getting their lesson plans and broadband and internet within your community. And I read an article yesterday about even Clemson was having problems in getting some of their students connected on the learning. Can somebody expand on that? Has internet for within the county been a bigger issue, or is about the same? Can somebody talk about that?
Toby or David, if y'all want to take it, you're welcome to. Otherwise, I'm happy to.
Yeah, I think the answer to your question is yes, has been a problem. I think our schools have done what most schools have done, using the buses that have some Wi-Fi, but I think that's been a little problematic. For us, particularly in the southern part of the county, from the city of Greenwood south, internet is a huge issue, or lack thereof is a huge issue. So I've started talking to my people, particularly George McKinney and some others, that if and when the governor releases some of this $1.9 billion that he and the legislature control, that we need to be prepared. I think that's going to be one of the target areas that I'm going to advocate that we try to address is internet access, particularly in the rural areas.
Yeah, I think that probably that issue probably jumped up so much during this crisis, and I think we've got to be able to deal with that as we go forward.
And it's not just access, it's also the ability to pay as well, which is something that we have to address, because I think the county's done an exemplary job in getting it where at least it's every 5 miles. But that's with the use of the fire stations and the Wi-Fi and those sorts of things. We know that doesn't work for everyone. So we've also been looking at, there are people in the city limits that have access to a gig, but if they can't afford it, it doesn't matter how much access they have, it's still the ability to pay. So, I mean, I think
true.
that's another issue that we have to be addressing as it relates to broadband.
Any other questions in regards to infrastructure, anything that anybody else wants to talk about? Okay, I think we'll segue into some of the social, and we talked about social service needs, but Justine, could you lead us on that part of it?
Thanks. Right, we talked a bit about the using the buses as Wi-Fi access points for e-learning. What other things have the school districts done in regards to social service needs? For example, in Greenville, they brought out lunches with the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, obviously, I'm not the one to speak for that. The school would be much better resource to tell you all the things they've done. But I know they've used the buses for Wi-Fi for e-learning, like we talked about earlier. I know they've done a lot of food delivery, drop-off points in the community. I'm not sure of other things they've done for social services, but that would be two.
They also partnered with the YMCA to expand the food delivery program to get it out to more rural communities and underserved communities in our area.
Do you know, is that going to continue in the summer?
That's all. We're working on that now. We're still working on whether we're going to have summer school or a reading program of some sort. Is it going to be virtual? And then the school lunch programs to continue on.
Thank you. Also, have there been any particular pointed efforts? I think Laura mentioned ACOG working with them on transportation, but working with the senior community during this.
Yeah, so United Way, we had a 33,000% increase in call volume for food. And so that brought us into also working with the senior community at the same time. So just working with the Eat Smart, Move More, Savannah, Upper Savannah Agency on Aging, the DSS with the Senior Food Voucher Program. This week, United Way, or last week, United Way just got volunteers on the phone to answer the calls for the Senior Voucher Program since the registration is now online and many seniors don't have access to the internet or even an email address, and working with that. And also just reaching out to the YMCA, the food bank, the food pantries, and trying to get people on calls about food to find out how we can work together collectively to bring more funding into the community to do the most good.
So there would be pickup points, if I'm correct, pickup points and delivery?
I think we're focusing a lot on delivery if when possible, but the pickup points will, like for the senior food voucher, they'll still have to go to the market. And so also working on how we can do that safely, because the whole reason that it went virtually is for safety issues. So just making sure if it is a pickup point, how to do that safely.
Justine, if I could ask Emily another question to that. When we were talking to the folks in Cherokee, they indicated that they were seeing a lot of new people to services, who have never needed or utilized, the food bank or any kind of services before. Is that similar in Greenwood?
Yes, we've seen like the largest increase in food. We figured our large businesses are doing good, so we're not seeing those large layoffs, but it's the small retailers or even the big retailers. When Belk's closes, that's a lot of people that are out of a job now. Ulta, I mean, that's still 12, 20, 30 jobs. So I think we're seeing those people, and then the first thing that they need assistance with is that food transition, because they're not running to go get food stamps and sign up for that. They're thinking food pantry is kind of our line of thinking.
Mm-hmm. Have y'all done a utility assistance program as well?
We don't do any programs in-house, but we work with the Salvation Army, Greater Greenwood United Ministries, and the others that provide rent, utility assistance, mortgage assistance. We're putting a lot of that, or they are putting a lot of that on hold right now, though, until the rent becomes due again. I know that they're anticipating for the large increase in that when that comes up. Because right now we're seeing the increase in food, but we know that the utility and rent requests will go up in the future.
Thank you. Are there any groups, clear groups of people in your communities that you think have fallen through the cracks throughout this pandemic? We talked about the food insecurity a bit, seniors,
Our local,
disabilities.
well, as I say, the disabilities too, but I was also going to speak to our college students. We have a local university and technical college, and a lot of them worked those part-time jobs that got that disappeared, and then they also were not part of the stimulus check. They fell in through that crack because they were still claimed on their parents and those types of issues. So I think the college students who are in town are kind of being, we don't know how to help them right now.
That's a good point. That's new. Yeah, thank you. Okay.
Justine, we've got a couple people from Lander, Matt, and I believe Denise is on there. Emily just touched on it. What has been the impact for Lander and for especially for your students?
Hi, this is Denise, and I work in the Alumni and Foundation Office. We started a crisis fund like most higher ed universities, and so we have assisted probably 50 students so far, and within 17 days of March 16th COVID, we had already raised money and already started granting out funds to our students. So they apply through our health and wellness office, and the student health and wellness office vets those needs, and it's a maximum of $300, but they can get it for a while. We have paid for rent, we've paid for utilities, we've paid for one of our students' laptop screens broke. We paid for transportation, gas vouchers for them to get home. We've paid for a myriad of things that they have applied for. And we are continuing to raise money and continuing to take those applications from those students, but we haven't turned any student down. And within 17 days, we have started granting those out. So we do those on a daily basis now. And that's for any student, whether they're local or whether they're at home, out of Greenwood County.
And Denise, what is the school's strategy for reopening? Has that been determined yet?
Yeah, so our president has already announced that we will reopen fully in the fall for the fall semester. So we actually have been called back to work starting Monday, June 1st, and all of our faculty and staff are coming back in waves in 3 different phases. And we are preparing to bring all of our students back fully on campus in August, and we will go through some trainings through this summer to know how to address those students when they come in, to help them move in. We're going to adjust our housing, adjusting classroom sizes and classroom space, and also the last word I heard, they were going to be offering more online classes also. But yeah, we're fully prepared to bring our students back on campus, fully preparing to bring our students back on campus in August. Great,
thank you. And Justine, before we turn it back over to Sharon, I wanted to ask, Stephen and Laura maybe, and anyone else around, as we mentioned before, the festivals and events in Greenwood are usually a big part of your summer. Obviously, those are having to be done a little bit differently. Same with the theater, Stephen, as you mentioned before. Have you all started to have conversations about what might the things look like moving forward? Are you going to try to do any kind of community, summer initiatives, or have things pretty much been postponed till next year? I know Lawrence is still, they have one of their festivals coming up in June, and they are, as of right now, my understanding is planning to go forward. What are you guys thinking for your festival you usually have in July with the I believe the chili and things of that nature? I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but what do you guys have planned for some of your other activities over the summer?
We it's the city in Uptown. We host the July event. It's the Festival of Discovery, And today in the paper, we just announced our postponement of that event to September. We just don't feel that we have enough time to properly and safely plan for that event. If you've ever been, we have roughly 39,000 people over a 3-day weekend, and there's no way to socially distance that crowd. So we have put some plans in place, and we will be doing that in September. We officially announced that today. The Festival of Flowers is canceled, and David can pipe in too here. But we still have our topiaries out on the square. There are still some smaller things that are happening. A lot of things have gone virtual, of course. Show us your beautiful garden virtually. But the topiaries are still out, and people still can come and visit those. And those are, one of the biggest attractors during the June and July months. We are planning, hopefully, as soon as the governor announces a little bit of an increase to that 50-person gathering, which we are hearing will be soon. We will try to plan some things for July, more of a local type event, just to give our businesses look forward to that boost of, that economic boost in the arm from those two events. So we know they're needing it. So we're still going to try and do some smaller events. But we don't know what those look like just yet. Again, we're still in that holding pattern to know what we can and cannot do.
Great. Thank you.
Dean, I'll address the Festival of Flowers as well as events on Lake Greenwood. As Laura said, the Festival of Flowers is pretty much a done deal so far this year. The topiaries are receiving a lot of attention from us. Our sponsors all moved forward with their investment in the topiaries, and we're putting together what I hope will be a flyover tour that we're going to promote out on social media with drone footage. That's under discussion currently, and we feel like we'll be able to make that happen. The Lake Greenwood organization, Connect Lake Greenwood, will be having their July 3rd fireworks. This will not be a land event. It'll be a boat-only event. The DNR has started moving forward with permitting for that, so we feel real good about that. But the other events that we've had planned have been either pushed out or canceled for the remainder of the year.
Great, thank you. Yes, I'm coming to town next week, and I always enjoy. My kids love the topiaries, so I'm glad that at least they will be out. Sharon, do you want to go ahead and ask some of the wrap-up questions, and then we'll leave a couple minutes for anybody else, if Josh or any of our Centera folks or anybody else has some comments or questions. Sharon? Is Sharon not with us? Sharon?
She's here, but she's unmuted, but somehow we're not getting her audio.
All right, well, I'll go ahead and while we figure that out. The first question is, and you guys talked about partnerships you guys have created, since the beginning, but are there any collaborative partnerships, either local, regional, or state, that you wish now in hindsight you might have formed earlier in the crisis? And if so, would developing them now still be helpful? Is there anything that maybe you look back and say we should have done this earlier, or wish we had worked with another effort or anything like that? Anything in hindsight, Heather or Toby or anybody, anything in that area? No? You guys are
nothing that immediately comes to mind. Obviously from the county's perspective, the relationship with DHEC and the hospital have been the most critical, and those are already in place. So nothing that immediately comes to mind, Dean.
Okay, good. How about resources? Are there any resources that would be helpful that you have not seen or used yet? We talked about things that have been used, including SBDC and the COG and others, but are there any resources that you guys wish, that you could use now that might be helpful as you move forward?
Dean, the resignation of our business community is coming back and saying we need promotion. We don't have the money to spend on advertising, and it would be great if we could come up with some type of program that would target advertising to drive customers back into the places of business. Laura's done a great job with regards to the uptown area, but when you think of communities like the Abbeyvilles, the Lawrence, Clinton areas, in Greenwood, this is kind of a blackout market, if you will, for television to be able to invest local advertising there. But it would be helpful for maybe some targeted billboards to promote shopping local and moving back in. One of the things that we had done early on is to get all of our members to, or make it available for them to send us information, and we would push them back out and spotlight. And again, it was to try to soften the expense of promotion, and we did that on a weekly basis, and we'll continue to do that. But I would think some type of billboard campaign for a multi-county area might be helpful.
Okay, I think that's, makes a lot of sense. And I think there's some opportunities. Erin, maybe we can look and work with some of the other folks about where there might be some opportunities there. Sharon's audio is not working, but on chat, she's asked me if Denise and anyone else, Emily, if you all who are raising funds for specific groups, if you could put links on the chat of where we can get more information for that, we will share those. So if you could add those to chat, we'd appreciate that. Terence, did you have a question?
No, I didn't. I was just listening. I didn't know I indicated I had a question.
Oh, you popped up. Go ahead.
I was thinking about it. Maybe I was thinking you were reading my mind. I was going to ask it, is there, to the group, is there I get concerned about our businesses, our legacy businesses there in your community. Is there anybody that, a business or restaurant that's not coming back? Are there businesses that surprise you that are not coming back? Have y'all heard anything on that?
Not in Uptown. Luckily, we've seen our folks pivot their business model and have been able to turn things around. They've done a lot of creative things. So we haven't seen that. I know there was an article in the newspaper about one of our franchises, but I don't know of any that are not coming back or any that haven't opened in Uptown. Real quick, while I'm talking, I'll go back. Dean, one of the other things that I think that we have looked at and we've talked about, but we haven't put the pen to paper, is a lot of communities have started some grants or some revolving loan funds as a community. We've had lots of conversations about that from a city perspective, what we can do for Uptown, but I think that also needs to reach to all of our businesses. I think we've pulled some models from some different communities, and we are still talking and looking to do something. But I think we've just got to have everybody come to the table for that. No one entity has the money to just roll out, $1 million, but I think we've got to all get together and talk about what we can do collectively to help the businesses, because there are some that are struggling and will continue to struggle. I think right now a lot of them think it's roses and great things, because Greenwood has a history of when we need each other, we support each other. But what's going to happen, I think, is next year things are going to, not look as great as they do now when they start looking at revenues and things for 2021, not only from a business perspective, but also from our government and our industry. So I think we're going to have to look at something funding wise, some kind of mechanism, whether it's grants or revolving loan funds or matching. I don't know what it is, but I think we've got to collectively come up with something to help the businesses that need the additional help.
I believe that. I think we heard last week Spartanburg has a plan in place, and I think that could be modeled. Columbia's doing it. I think we're trying to do the same thing in Anderson, and so I do think it's a year or 2 years from now. I think that, you know, unfortunately, I think the big boxes, the Walmarts, the Home Depots, I mean, they did well because they were able to stay open. I worry about our small businesses. I know we're at the top of the hour. Does anybody else from the group have anything pressing that they would like to ask us? So, you know, if we hear Dean and his team here, that we can shout it out to the rest of the people of the upstate of how we can facilitate and make things better in Greenwood County.
The only thing I wanted to mention was when Heather mentioned about the internet, we have utility assistance programs for power and water, but more than ever now, internet is falling closer and closer to that as a necessity. And the United Way Association of South Carolina, one of their initiatives and policy has been rural internet. But that was just getting it there, but how do we get them to be able to afford it? So kind of thinking on that now as a 10 at the top update type thing, how do we address utilities assistance? Because you can't necessarily get federal funding to pay for internet assistance. So how do we deal with that?
I think that's moved to the front of the line because of the crisis. And I think we'll hear that repeat itself all over the 10 counties. Go ahead,
I
Dean.
agree. And Terence, real quick, before we let everybody go, a couple other real quick things. And Laura, thank you for kind of framing about the concern over the next 6 months and longer. I'm curious real quick from anyone else if you have that same concern, and especially Heather, I want to ask about employment. The short term, you indicated that manufacturing is doing well. Do you see, before this all happened, a lack of workforce was a challenge for a lot of companies. Do you envision some of the manufacturers being able to take advantage of the fact that there are others that have lost employees? Are any of them looking to hire at this point?
Yeah, I think that utilizing SE Works and our other resources at the COG, they are working with, for instance, MEC that is closing in August to make certain that they are connecting those employees with positions that are open at other manufacturers. They're also working with the employers and Piedmont Technical College to ensure that if there's any gap skills training that needs to take place, that they're addressing that. We were down to well below 3% unemployment earlier this year. In March, I think that number was, interestingly enough, February was 3.5. I think March was 3.4. So we have yet to see the big boom as to what that looks like, which I'm anticipating the April numbers, when they're fully released, will show us where that comes in. But when you're down to that low percent of unemployment, taking advantage of a situation where more people are entering the workforce, you've got to be smart. And I think collaboratively working to try to get those folks into positions that were open and keeping them in Greenwood is really, really important. We also talked about roughly $40+ million worth of investment that's before county council right now. There's another, I'm not looking at the number, but let's say somewhere between 50 and 100 jobs right there that we're going to need to fill as well. So there's opportunities for those employees to upskill and get in those jobs. So that doesn't give me as much pause as it might in some other communities.
Great, thank you. So as Terence said, we're at our time. So let me give you kind of an overview of what our intent is to do with this information. We will compile a summary from today's call with some of the specific things that you guys mentioned. We appreciate all the great comments. and that will be available within the next 3 or 4 days. We do have a web page that we're keeping all of the county information. Of course, the recording will also be on that page as well. Then once we're done with all 7 of the workshops, as we said, we're right now focusing on all of the what we're calling non-urban counties, and then we'll connect that with Greenville, Spartanburg, and Anderson. But we're going to look at where the themes are across the region and come up with some ideas of how we can support the work that you all are doing in your individual communities. And some of the ideas here have been very good. If you think of anything more, most of you, if not everybody, has our contact information. So please feel free to reach out to us. And from this group, both Heather and Denise are on our board. So if you want to reach directly to them and they can share with us as well, that would certainly be fine also. And then we'll continue to update. And once we've done the workshops, we'll come back with kind of some ideas that we think will be where we can play a role and be helpful as all of our communities continue to rebound and recover. And I think Greenwood, you guys are always very strong in moving forward. And I think we'll continue to be proactive in a lot of this. So again, thank you all for your time. And Terence, I'll let you give the final word.
No, just again, thank you for what you're doing down there. And obviously, if we can help, just let us know. I hope everybody has a good day.
Thank you, everybody.